there, when I think of pain, it's like, okay, is this a physical pain, like pain where it will hurt you, like a pain in your hamstring or your quad or whatever, and you're like overtraining and you just think, it could be a potential hot spot that turns into a stress fracture, like a pain that will not go away no matter what you're doing that day. That's a
Mhm.
pain that needs to be recognized and to be dealt with. That is not a pain of in your head.
Right.
You're trying to work through it. And then when you get into specific workouts, right there, it's understandably so that um, that you'll get into a workout and there will be a time period in there where you will want to quit. You will want to get rid of that quote unquote that pain.
This episode of the Smart Athlete Podcast is brought to you by Solpre. If you're active at all, whether you're running or simply out walking for the day, you've probably experienced one of the number one problems that active people have, and that's chafing. Solpre's all-new, all-natural anti-chafe balm solves that problem while feeding your skin the vital nutrients it needs to be healthy. If you'd like to stop chafing once and for all and treat your body right, go to Solpri.com to check out the anti-chafe balm today. That's SOLPRI.com. Welcome to the Smart Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Funk. My guest today is a former Division I track athlete at Tennessee. He's also a former pro triathlete. Before that, he was amateur world champion triathlon in 2008. He's got his master's in sports psychology, and he's had a very interesting career, which we're going to get into. At one time during his triathlon career, he represented the Just Lead nonprofit organization, and currently he's a medical device manager at Abiomed. Welcome to the show, Eric Bell.
Jesse, thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like your background. If you're not on the YouTube version, if you're on the audio only version, you're missing out on looks like an interesting painting and probably a pretty cool clock in your background versus my like total mess house under reconstruction
Yeah.
kind of background going on.
Yeah, this is my office. So this is as the pandemic kind of happened and we all became kind of used to the podcasting or virtual reality of meetings. This turned into my office, and here it is. So
yeah, I know it's been interesting. And when I've gotten back on, I don't know if you're familiar with Reddit. So it's a large collection of forums and subforums about anything under the sun, from cat memes to triathlon. I know people have there've been people posting about how to deal with this situation and background. They share backgrounds and stuff. And sometimes there's most recently I saw a comical background from the show The Office. So it looks like you're in an office and there's this kind of window behind you, but then you can see the characters from the show behind the window. It's very subtle. So it's interesting, the creative solutions people have come up with now that this is everybody's world and not just people like me who were doing this pre-pandemic. So
right, exactly.
Yeah. So I want to ask kind of straight off, which is a bit of a hard jump, but I mean, you have your master's in sports psychology, but you're working, previously medical vice rep, now a manager. How do you make that jump? Why are you not coaching teams to success? I mean, how do you change industries like that?
Yeah. So if I go back, after college, I went and got a real job right after you're an athlete and getting your degree. And I was a personal trainer and did a bunch of fitness things. And I have a fascination with psychology. And I saw a sports psychologist when I was at the University of Tennessee. We'd meet weekly. Dr. Craig Risberg was his name. And I thought, okay, I really want to dive deeper into this spectrum. And so I decided to go get my master's degree. While I was getting my master's degree, I had just been kind of running. And that's when I started my triathlon career. And so they kind of went simultaneously down the path that I really didn't know where the path would go.
Mm-hmm.
And my triathlon career ended about, so got my master's degree, kind of did triathlon for about 6 more years after that. And so when I finished my career, my career kind of came to an end. I was actually going to try to qualify for the 2012 Olympic team, and I was training in Australia. Came back from Australia, ran a half marathon here in Knoxville, off of very little running. Ended up running 112, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm so fit. This is going to be a perfect year for me."
Mhm.
And I remember waking up the next day and I could barely walk, and kind of that lasted like 3 or 4 days. And I was like, that's never happened to me. And so I just kind of chalked it up to, well, I hadn't been running that much. I
Mhm.
was doing a ton of swimming and biking. And long story short, that year, my career, I had never, I've been racing since I was in 6th grade,
Mhm.
and I'm 30 years old, or 31 at the time, and never dropped out of a race in my life for
Mhm.
any reason. I had
Right.
never quit.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I started getting in these races, and it literally felt like somebody just unplugged me. Like I'd get out of the swim, get on my bike, and I literally couldn't turn the pedals over.
Mhm.
And so I was like, something physically is wrong with me. And so I started getting all this work done, and blood tests and this test and this test. And I thought I had mono. That's kind of the feeling I had. And sure enough, what happened was, I ended up getting my testosterone checked, and my
Mhm.
testosterone levels were like 150.
Yeah.
Well, a 150 testosterone level is like an 85-year-old man.
Yeah.
And, I'm trying to compete at the highest level in the world, and it's not going to work. And so at that time, I was 31, and I was like, all right, this probably isn't going to work for me anymore. I don't know how to continue on at this level with kind of what's happening and my body kind of falling apart. So I took a Highlands aptitude and ability test, and I I wish that I had gone back. I wanted to help people. That's my general interest, is helping people in any spectrum. I'm fascinated with psychology. I'm fascinated with medicine. Therefore, I took the Highlands aptitude and ability test, and out of that test came, hey, you'd be great as a doctor, but the part of going back to school and having to do that at 31, that's going to be a real struggle. So the guy was like, you're a born sales guy. Go do medical sales. And so I was like, all right. And so that's kind of been my path the last 10 years. As things have progressed over the last few years, the sports psychology world, and even psychology, whether it's industrial or organizational psychology, has become more of a fascination of mine. And I think that there will come a day where I'll take my last 10 years of work experience, however long that lasts, take my sports psychology experience, and I think that there'll be a time period where I'll merge and kind of take the two worlds, and they'll become one. And so, not necessarily saying that my sports psychology background or degree is off the table. I just think that I went down a different path, and it's going to lead me to another one.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty common um, train of thought, right? Where it's like, I'm interested in this, I'm going to go do this, but I don't know where the path will lead. Though, in your case, I ask because it's a master's, not undergrad. Because usually people are
Yeah,
like, hey, I'm going to go do this undergrad thing, and then I don't know where it'll go. And by the master's, more, not everybody obviously, but more people have it kind of figured out, or they're more sure of like, this is the thing I want to do. Not again, not that it's everybody, because I even know, I feel like, I wish I could think who it was, but I feel like I've spoken to even PhD graduates that are like, I thought I wanted to do this, and then I got out and I was like, no, I just wasted all this time.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I totally get that as well. Where how do you merge those two? I mean, is there
yeah.
a coherent thought on that, or is it like, I have a feeling that there's going to be some convergence?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because it's about performance, right? I mean,
Mhm.
even though I may not be competing on the track or in triathlon, I'm now in the business sector, and I'm in sales, and it has a performance mechanism. It's interesting. I've been listening a lot to Simon Sinek,
Mhm.
and his new book, The Infinite Games, and it's the difference is that a race has a beginning and an end. It's time, all the common players.
Right.
Whereas my world now does not have all that. There
Right.
is no beginning and end. I guess there is in a quote unquote, working with, when you're in a company that reports to Wall Street, there's quarterly numbers. We report it to the street and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we're trying to build a business, and that business was here before me and will be here when I leave.
Mm-hmm.
So I really try to insist that my team focuses on the process. And that was my biggest hurdle in going back to my college career and even triathlon. It's like, what is that process, and how can I stay in the moment each time instead of getting ahead of myself? I'm a big, intuitive guy, feeler, and I get into certain races, and you're going to go through so many roller coasters throughout that specific race. 1 minute you're feeling great, the next minute you're like, dude, I want to drop out of this race. I'm hurting so bad. And then the feeling changes as you continue in your
Mm-hmm.
fitness levels. And it's the same process in business. There are some days that the activities don't match the results, and then there are days that the results don't match the activities. And so you just got to kind of get to a plan and stick to the plan on a regular basis. And that's what I try to teach my team, and that's what I try to live by is, here is my process. Am I sticking to my process every single day?
This is kind of
So there is some parallels.
Yeah, this was kind of like straddling the line between career and racing, but thinking about that consistency, that's something I have another show called Runner's High on the YouTube channel. Again, for if you were just listening, there's a YouTube channel, check that out. But I talk about consistency all the time, and a lot of that is following the process, sticking to your plan. But the one thing I think is troublesome, and you touched on earlier, I think, along with kind of hitting that, seeing like the wall of overtraining and your testosterone going in the toilet, is trying to figure out when not to stick to the plan. When the plan is actually a breaking point. Because fitness wise, you're always trying to straddle the line between training just enough and training too much, because that's where maximum gains are. So, is it the same thing career-wise when you're pushing your team? You're sticking to the plan, but then how do you know when not to stick to the plan? Like, what in both realms, what are the indicators there? Like, how do you know when to change course?
So I think that I know exactly what you're talking about. So if I go back and I look at my high school career, when I was in high school, I was running literally, Jesse, 20 to 25 miles a week and ran 4:15.
Yeah.
Okay. That if you talk to any distance runner today, 20 to 25 miles a week, they're like, dude, that's not a distance runner. That's a 400 meter, or 800 meter guy.
Right.
You get to college and everybody's like, oh, you got to go 60 miles a week, 70 miles a week, 80 miles a week, right? You got to do that. So that's what I did, right? I went from where I was to that plan, right? Which is what everybody says you have to do to be the best. Okay. Well, my first year, I made it to November, got hurt. My second year, I made it to back it out to, January, February, got hurt. My third year, it was May, got hurt. And so finally my fourth year, I was like, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to run 45 to 50 miles a week, and I'm not going to get hurt. And however fast I run is how fast I run. And the rest of the guys on the team were doing their thing. I took a day off every week.
Yeah.
I ran 14, 18 in a 5K off that type of training.
Yeah.
Right. And it goes back to your thing. The plan is not the same for everybody.
Right.
So what works for you may not work for me. And every distance runner's plan is not the same. The key is, I think that our bodies speak to us. The problem with distance runners is we take that information and think, oh, you got to push harder, because in order to become the best, you got to go through pain. And that pain mechanism, you got to shut it off, and that becomes the best. Well, there's a difference between pain and listening to your body, that maybe today you just don't have it. Maybe you didn't recover that well. I think with all the technologies that are out there, it's unbelievable. You see the Whoop devices, you see the Apple Watches, they give you so much feedback on your recovery. Whereas 10 years ago, that stuff wasn't around. I feel like that the athletes today have a lot a lot better advantage. If I had a Whoop device that was telling me, dude, you slept like crap, you didn't recover, then maybe I wouldn't go out and throttle myself on 10 400s that day,
Yeah.
right? I'd be like, dude, my body can't take that. I need an easy day. Um, and the same is true in business. There are times I always look at my team and I'm like, okay, what are we doing? What was our plan this week? Did we accomplish our plan? And if I look back and think our activity was crap, we didn't do anything. Or we sell a device that saves patients lives. It's a heart pump. Well, heart attacks don't have a time or day. They don't care about the time or day. They don't care about
Right.
the holiday. So my teams are me and my teams are in the hospital day, night, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. It could be a Saturday, Sunday. It could be a Christmas day. It doesn't matter. Our teams are always in the hospital. And what I try to do is I try to recognize when myself or my team may have been working too hard and they may need a day off, right? Or I need to really kind of say something, and I have to look and think, okay, is this the day that I need to say it? Or is the team just so beat up that they're not going to handle, maybe some criticism, not so much criticism, but just some coaching advice.
Hmm.
But you know what I'm saying? And so it all works together in that spectrum is, when is the right time and are you listening to your body? And I just feel like there's a lot of things in life that will teach you and show you, and listening to our bodies is probably one of the key things. And for whatever reason, as a distance runner, I don't think we're very good at listening to our bodies very well.
Yeah. Well,
So
no, go ahead. You're fine.
yeah, well, I was just saying, and that's the key to being the most successful. I think I look at golfers and I'm like, how do they always do it, right? They have a bad shot. The best golfers in the world don't let that bad shot carry into 3 or 4 or 5 more bad shots. They're like, okay, I had a bad shot. Now I got to move on. Or they hit a bad shot and they're like, okay, I can't get to the green from here. I'm going to take my medicine and do X. And then they set themselves up so that this one bad shot doesn't lead to a bad score. And I think that that's the key too, is one bad race, one bad month in business, one bad week, don't compound it, right? And I think that's the other key, is staying in the moment and sticking to the process, and not thinking, okay, these things are going to carry on, and this bad week or bad mistake or whatever, the bad workout, I'm not going to let it carry on, because it really doesn't define me. And it's not really who I am right now.
Yeah. I've got a lot of thoughts here. Um, it's like hard to know where to start, but I think part of that is like, that's taken, at least on my part, some maturity over the years of knowing that, like, maybe you just had a crap day. I mean, it's like, I'm going through that a little bit right now as I'm rebuilding running my, I've come away from triathlon. I'm coming back to running, 32 now. And I'm trying to get back into like college level running shape to run some 10K PRs before I'm too old to do so anymore. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, this is kind of the
yeah.
last shot. And my long run pace now is like 7:15 versus like it was like 6:45 at kind of my peak. And I could run 6:45, but like that's too hard for what I should be doing right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it's taken some maturity, and still there's that kind of almost reactionary thing that's like, I'm not as good as I was. And it's
Hmm.
like be patient, stick to the plan. And then again, like, I didn't have a great day Wednesday we've just moved from like tempo to like low threshold type of work in a fartlek. And it was not great. Times were not great. And it's like, there's that part of you that goes, I'm never going to get there. I'm just not, but then the other part has to say, don't be reactionary. Like, it's just one day. Like, maybe you didn't recover enough, increase in miles, the temperature, like, there's all these externalities. It's just one point in time. It's not going to define absolutely everything. And that lack of being reactionary to a negative event or a positive event
For sure.
is I think one of the keys to being great at whatever you're doing. Because like we talked about earlier, you're going to stay the course, whether it was amazing or terrible. Maybe that adjusts you a little bit, but you're still like, okay, things are working. We're just going to keep doing the thing that we were doing before.
Right. Right. I, it's interesting. I 100% agree with you. I think that what I didn't do maybe at a younger age that I wish I did was take a step back and reflect on things more.
Mm-hmm.
And not have so much judgment, but just take a step back and say, okay, what is working? What was working? I'll never forget, I was at the University of Florida. That's where out of high school, I signed at the University of Florida. I know it's ironic if anybody is listening that I went from the University of Florida to the University of Tennessee, the two big rivals. But the former University of Tennessee coach, Doug Brown, legendary coach at Tennessee, went down to Florida and coached down there, and I followed him down there. And I went to summer school. So I'm finishing my career, or finished high school and went down and went to summer school. And first day that kind of everybody was there, we had to do a 10-mile tempo run. Well, 10-mile tempo run in August in Gainesville, Florida is hard. Okay. Yeah. It's hot. It's miserable. It's humid. And we get there, and even walk-ons, guys trying out, were there. And I finished dead last that day. And I remember thinking, dude, what am I doing? I can't run in college. I can't run at this level. And I remember him telling me, hey, dude, don't worry about it. It's just a day. He goes, you got big fish to fry here. And I thought to myself, what? Like, most coaches would be pissed, right?
Yeah.
Just pissed. What are you doing? You're a sissy. You got to be tougher. And sure enough, he encouraged me so much. I have an internal critic that's going to beat me up anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And he encouraged me, and I ended up being 16th at the SEC conference. As a freshman, I was a top freshman in the SEC that year, right? I mean, I literally go from finishing last on a team run at the University of Florida to top freshman. And it was because I didn't let that one moment define me, kind of to your point. And I had a coach that encouraged me. And it's interesting as kids start to look at schools and think about who's coaching, we all want to go to the school that, gets recognition and yada, yada, yada. But I think that the key is it's like a relationship. And it's a long relationship, and you better find the coach that you love and that really fits you, because if not, it will be a long 4 or 5 years and you may not enjoy running the way you used to. But I also say that it's the same thing. Just because you have one good race doesn't, this step, you got to come back the next day and do it again. But if you take a step back and think, all right, what have I done the last few weeks that have been really good? Let's continue to do those. Or I had a bad day. What was going on here that day? It's kind of a reflective question that we should be asking ourselves more. Hey, what's going on? Am I tired? Am I emotionally up, down for some reason? Is there a lot of things going on in my life? Am I stressed? And so taking a step back allows you to kind of look at the whole picture. And as a distance runner, we're always like based on the time that day. Mm-hmm. That is who I am. And I just don't necessarily think that that's the truth.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned about yourself, and I think this is true of a lot of distance runners or endurance athletes, we have that internal critic. And again, that, as you mentioned, that I'm only as good as my last run.
Yeah.
I may have run my lifetime PR 2 days ago, but who gives a shit? It's today that I'm terrible, and that's who I am now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think as you had that experience of encouragement, I think that's crucial. Gosh, I've just forgotten her name. Former pro British triathlete. It'll come to me. I've had her on the podcast before. Talking about, she had a really great beginning of her pro career, and she raced for 10, 12 years as a pro and just really lived most of it in overtraining, because, a lot of her coaching, I think, was to continue to echo that like internal critic, to be like, go harder, do more, when it was like, she didn't need that. She already had that. I mean, most of us that go on, regardless of like I ran at what's now a Division II school, but whether, you're Division II, Division I, Division III, NAIA, whatever it is, if you're in college and you're running, like, you're still part of a group that most people will never be able to be a part of. And if you survive 4 years in that atmosphere, you have something internally that's driving you forward. You probably don't need a coach to be your personal whipping boy. Like, you just don't need it. So I think probably shows your coach's experience to know there is very little good to come from like beating an athlete up over one day, because you just don't get through endurance sports without a big internal motivator. Like, people don't last. I've seen plenty of people that were way more talented than me that could, I remember a guy who ran soccer at the school I went to. He came out and we were running 8Ks for our conference versus 10Ks. And he came out and ran like low 26s, high 25s or something off of like no training.
Yeah.
But he was like, I don't really like it. I don't want to do it. That always just irritated the crap out of me, because it was like, you've got such awesome legs that I will probably never have,
right,
but you don't want to use them. So that's how I know for sure you've got to have that internal motivation or you don't make it. So it's like, I don't know. I guess I'm happy that coaches out there like exist that know you don't really need to beat up on everybody.
Yeah, I always say that I don't think anybody, and especially very few distance runners, need a coach like Bobby Knight. I mean, I just don't think that works for distance runner, And the best coaches in the world are those coaches that, can look at their team and think, all right, I've got a team, I've got a plan. I know I've got to, all 10 of these guys or 12 or 10 guys or girls, they need to do X today for a workout. And the best are the ones that are thinking, okay, is this a motivator thing? Do I need to motivate this person? Or is it something that they're fatigued and I need to pull them off the track and say, hey, we're not going to keep throttling ourselves. You need to go for an easy cool down run and go back and just rest and chill out. Mm-hmm. The best coaches in the world are those people that can recognize that and adapt and change to make that be the plan for that particular individual. I mean, it just doesn't work for everybody. You and I, can run the same times, and you may have to run 70 miles a week and I may have to run 40, mm-hmm. but that's because our bodies are just different. It's just how we're made. So everybody's different.
Yeah. And that's, you were talking about that earlier. That's exactly the case, because I always responded very positively to extra miles. Just like when I went from 6 days a week to 7 days a week, I tacked on like a 12-mile recovery run on Sundays. That's the year I dropped a minute in my 5K. I went from high 16s to high 15s.
Yeah.
Like, that was the rest of the training plan didn't change much from one year to the next, just adding that extra mileage. And so that's something that works well for me. So I kind of fit that almost typical, like, more miles, better times mold. But I know that, people like you exist where you can run or should run lower miles because you're not going to tolerate them. And as you said, the thing about great coaching, and I think great athletes, is that they recognize that there is a difference and not everybody fits into one mold.
It's 100% the fact. I think that that's the key, whether you're a coach, whether you're a boss, it's that there's no one way to do it. There's just not. And if there was, then we'd all be, Steve Jobs, because he has a plan and we'd be,
right.
He could tell you the plan and you go do it and you become, a bazillionaire because you created Apple. And it's just, we're all different and all created differently. And, you've got to listen to yourself and you got to listen to those around you and trust the people that, you don't need those critics. If you're a guy or gal that's already a huge critic, I don't need it. I don't need you to pile it on me. I actually need you to take it off of me. Right. Yeah. I need you to say, hey, let's go, man. Quit beating yourself up.
Right.
And there's plenty, maybe there are some out there that need that kind of extra kick and extra critic guy, but it's just, that wasn't me. So I did it differently.
I think that, and this isn't to disparage like high school athletes or beginning athletes. I think sometimes that's more appropriate for that atmosphere where it's like people are more casually interested. But it's like, I think once you get to the point of, serious collegiate athletics, pro runners, high level amateur triathletes, pros of any, at that point, it's like you've already self-selected. Like, you're in it. You don't. So I think it's, again, maybe more I can think of, high school athletes I ran with that I've, you know, been around, coached very, very briefly, um, while I was in college. And there are people that come out that are there because their friends are there, and they need some motivation because this is not their jam, but they want to be with their friend. So
Right.
they need that energy,
For sure.
but then the other people don't. So um,
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, because you're interested in psychology, you got the degree, you've been through it. Earlier we were talking about types of pain and distinguishing the difference between, this is uncomfortable or this is something's wrong.
Hmm.
You know, and this is where I think English kind of fails us as a language, in that we just talk about it. Does it hurt?
Yeah.
It's pain, right? You're in pain,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, but what kind of pain? Is it burning? Is it stabbing? Is it tingling? Is
Yeah.
it aching? It's like, and that is one way to try to distinguish, but it's even that seems so imprecise. It's like, how do we better describe these sensations? Because we both know, and anybody listening that's been through this, like if you're going out for threshold, like a aerobic threshold or an anaerobic
Right.
threshold, they're two different feelings, and
Hmm.
they're two different kind of walls to
Hmm.
get through. And I would describe it as a burning pain, but something I can relax into with enough experience. I think you can
Hmm.
let your mind be like, it just hurts right now, and it's burny and it's fine. But then there's like almost a deeper sense of ache is not quite the right word. See, this is the language is the barrier here. It's this like deeper sense of inconsistency, or like a glitch in gears, or something where it's your legs just aren't turning over.
Yeah.
You're trying to get up to that thing. It just, you can't reach that gear, and something is just holding you back. And maybe it's not even painful, but it's like, to me, it's almost a lack of rhythm, or something
Hmm.
like that. But it's like, how do we communicate these things? How do we identify them internally? That's always something I've struggled with, in that I'm pretty good, at least inside my own self, knowing what they are, but trying to teach somebody else, like, this is what to feel for. I don't know how to communicate that. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on, what's the classification system? How do we teach people to feel through these different types of pain?
Yeah. So, when I think of pain, it's like, okay, is this a physical pain, like pain where it will hurt you, like a pain in your hamstring or your quad or whatever, and you're like overtraining and you just think, it could be a potential hot spot that turns into a stress fracture, like a pain that will not go away no matter what you're doing that day. That's a
Mhm.
pain that needs to be recognized and to be dealt with. That is not a pain of in your head.
Right.
You're trying to work through it. And then when you get into specific workouts, right there, it's understandably so that um, that you'll get into a workout and there will be a time period in there where you will want to quit. You will want to get rid of that quote unquote that pain, right? Because it's starting to over it's like, okay, I'm hitting this wall. I know that in order to get to the next fitness level, I need to keep sticking with this and sit with it. I think that we naturally do not, you mentioned the word relax. I think that there's probably breath work is important, meditative work. I think those things are super important for people to say, okay, I'm going to breathe into this. If you've ever, as a triathlete, you've been on that bike and you're like just hammering it, hammering it, hammering it. And all of a sudden you kind of take some deep breaths and you say, okay, dude, I'm hurting. I've got to relax into this. All of a sudden you realize, if you have a power meter or whatever, you can continue the power, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden the energy changes in your body,
Mhm.
right? And you settle into this, you settle into it, and so you kind of enter into that world, so to speak. And then it's like, okay, what's on the other side of that? I don't know what's going to happen on the other side of that. But in order for us to really it's almost like we sit with our pain. We don't as human beings naturally do that very well.
No.
We want to get rid of it. Like whatever it is, I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to drink my pain away. I'm going to drug my pain away. I'm going to do whatever the pain is. I'm going to do whatever it is to get rid of it. As
Mhm.
opposed to entering into it, it's the same process of what you and I were speaking to earlier. Take a step back and be like, what is this about? What's going on here? It says self-evaluation. Like, what's this pain about? Is this pain an injury pain, or is this pain, this is normal pain that I have to get through to go to the next level, to get to the next fitness level? And I think that that's the thing that we need to really, that athletes, the best athletes kind of can sit with their own pain and work through their quote unquote pain. So there is a difference between fitness level quote unquote pain and injury pain, and knowing the difference is the key to your success in my mind. It's like you've got to listen to your body, and if it is telling you you've got a hot spot, and if you keep going you're going to get a stress fracture, you probably pay attention to that, or otherwise you don't, and you end up getting a stress fracture. The body has a unique way of saying, if you don't listen to me now, I'm going to make you listen to me later.
Mhm.
Right? And you may get a stress fracture, and 2 or 3 days off in the beginning would have been a heck of a lot better than 3 months off now.
Yeah.
Right? If we'd have listened to it. But I think the body is a fascinating thing. And in order for us we need to be one with our body. It's a mind and our body and our spirit. And it needs to be all kind of one to kind of if we can get that to work together, you will have a lot of success. It's when you are at odds with one of those two, three things that you just, in my mind, you kind of struggle, and your body ends up teaching you harder lessons than if you'd have just kind of worked with it.
Yeah. Well, and you've been through that. Like I said, I think the way you described it I would translate it as like momentary versus persistent pain.
Mm, perfect.
But it's like also generalized versus pinpoint, right? If
Yeah.
it's like
Hmm.
let's go back to like we're doing anaerobic threshold, we're doing 400-meter repeats, and the lactic acid is just going to build up. Like
Yeah.
there's a point where your body is going to be screaming at you, and it's going to be almost your entire body. But if there's like your ankle or your Achilles tendon or something is on fire even after you stop, and it hurts when you're walking around,
Yeah.
like that's the difference between momentary versus persistent and generalized versus pinpoint.
For
And
sure.
I think that's a great way to diagnose it. I just think about, I talk to a lot of beginning runners or
Mm.
young athletes, and it's like, how, how do I translate that experience into words? So it's nice to hear from someone like you who can make it a little more cogent than me, to solidify my own thoughts, just because it is so important to learn that lesson. And you know, because the balance in endurance running, right, is between listening to your body and ignoring it entirely.
Yeah. Yep.
There's this quote I tell a lot of people from one of my college coaches, because not to be like braggadocious, but I'm fairly smart, so I like to overthink things.
Yeah.
And I would try to think all the minutia, and we'd be doing repeats and stuff. And he said to me, Jesse, do you know why stupid people are so much faster than you? He says they don't think, they just run.
Yeah, that's a fact. I get that. Trust me, I've thought many times, is there a switch that I can just turn my brain off and just go? And I wish there was a switch,
Yeah.
because I think to your point, I overthink things. I'm like, oh gosh, okay, you get in a race and you're like, oh crap, I'm trying to run, this, and did I just mess up my whole race because I went out too fast or
Yeah.
whatever? And to your point, I wish I could just turn my brain off and just run. I think if I look back in life, back when I was first starting and stuff, the coaches would be like, hey, this person, he is the best here at this meet. I want you to go run with him as long as you can. And so I didn't think about times. I didn't think
Yeah.
about anything. I was like, I just got to go stay with him as long as I can and see what happens.
Right.
And I had some of my best performances doing that.
Yeah.
versus, okay, guys, we got to go out. You're going to have to run this lap and this lap and this lap and this lap. I was just like, I got in there and I'm overthinking it just like you.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, 65, crap, that's too fast. Now what? Now what's going to
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah.
Right. So I hear you.
Well, it's like I just did one of the running show episodes talking about pacing and the benefits of like being able to sit on somebody for a while and not have to do your own pacing. It's like we underestimate how much brain power we're using just to try to maintain a pace. Whereas if we could just say, oh, that guy's got it and shut it down,
Yeah.
it becomes so much easier. And, and that's like, I'm sure you've seen them. Anybody that's watched any of the Prefontaine movies, like that's a theme that's played over and over and over because he wanted to be in the front the whole time. And that was kind of his ethos. And it's like, I get it. Like from a philosophical, like ethical standpoint, you want to be the winner from line to line. Nobody came to touch. So I get it. But at the same time, it's like, and eventually he did, but it's like you're limiting your potential because you're using up that brain power sooner than you have to. And it just, that's another thing that sometimes people will listen to you when you tell them, and other people just got to experience it.
I think we all are like that, right? We've been told so many things in our life or at different times as kids or whatever. And you're like, no, I think I know better. And again, it always goes back to life has a way of teaching you the lesson that you may need to learn.
Yeah.
And, it's the same with running. You'll learn the lesson one way or the other, right? And it's whether or not you adapt to that lesson afterwards or not.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a hard shift, but before we run out of time, I did want to ask you a little more about the nonprofit work you were doing while you were racing, how that all kind of went together and what you were doing.
Yeah. So Just Lead is an organization here in Knoxville. It's been around. It was around before me. And I got involved with them, and my vision was always to help people. And I tell people when I started triathlon, the truth is I didn't come from a swimming background. And so I literally was like, I don't even know if I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I hired a coach. His name was Brent Lorenzen. And he was like, hey man, this is what you're going to do. You're going to swim 50s. That's all you're going to do. 50s with a paddle and buoy and a band. And you're going to do 50s, and let's see what happens. Let's see how fast you can get just by swimming repeat 50s. And that's what I did literally for an entire year. I didn't go over 50 yards. And my first race, I panicked and I swam the entire mile on my back. And to go from that point to the success that I had in triathlon, I always wanted people to know and kids to know, if you want to do something, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be the limiting factor in your mind. And so this Just Lead group is a group in Knoxville that helps inner city kids after school. They kind of have a program after school. They do a lot of athletics, and they have mentors, and they allow for the kids that may not have a great family home, have a place to go after school to learn new ways of doing things. And so I got involved with them because I believed that I wanted to teach those kids that they have the ability to do whatever it is they want to do if they really think and believe it. And so I would go there and I would do a lot of talking, and I'd hang out with the kids, and I just wanted them to know, like, no matter what their circumstances is, just like me, no background in swimming, you put the hard work into it and it will reward you, but you got to believe in yourself. And so that was the premise behind why I got involved with Just Lead here in Knoxville, is because I wanted to help those kids that may not have been as fortunate as I was to believe in themselves, that they have they have the ability to change their destiny, so to speak.
Your thought kind of reminds me of myself, although I didn't have as much success in triathlon as you did. I did not have a swimming background. I actually avoided swimming for a long time. And when I began swimming in college, I have sinus problems, which I finally figured out after college, after I've been racing for 10 years. It's actually just like year-round allergies that I can deal with. But like, because of that, I couldn't swim one length of the pool with my face in the water. Like I had to be, head out of the
Yeah.
water, like
Yeah.
doing polo. I couldn't do it. And then, got to the point where I'm racing, half Ironmans, going sub 430. Like it's because I wanted it bad enough.
Yep.
And I think the important thing to take away is that, we're kind of two counterpoints of a similar story in that you did reach your, the stage of being a pro, and I did not quite get there. Which that's a whole story. I crashed and had to have surgery and the whole thing. But I still ended up in a place that's very much different than I could have imagined because I pursued that thing.
Right.
And that's something I think gets lost. I see a lot of cynicism nowadays about, you give that attitude that if you work hard enough, you can achieve anything you want. And it's like, you get this pushback of, well, no, you can't. Like you yourself, very genetically gifted, running low 4-minute mile in high school off of 20, 25 miles a week. Like that's incredible. Not everybody could do that. But even though everybody can't do that, if it's something you want and you pursue it, you are going to go places that other people wouldn't have gone, and you wouldn't have gone had you not pursued it, had you just sat back and been like, well, I'll just give up.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
Mm-hmm.
talking about, I'm trying to remember what you had said exactly, talking about life having a way of showing you, or your body having a way of showing you what it wants. I think life kind of similarly has a way of kind of putting you where you need to be if you put in the effort.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's like in my case, maybe it's not being a pro triathlete, but now I'm leading this company and it's affecting people. And it came through
Yeah.
my pursuit of triathlon. Like the company never would have existed had I not pursued that path. It just wouldn't have. Something else may have existed, but the thing I'm doing now wouldn't have. And
100%.
I think communicating that idea is a little tough because it's not succinct. It's not like just work hard to make it like, it's not a sound bite, but that's my counterpoint to like the cynicism I see of the people just talk about survivorship bias, where it's like, well, only the millionaires talk about if you just work hard, you can be a millionaire. It's like, okay, a little bit, but yes, there were some people that fell off, didn't make it, whether it be being rich or being a pro athlete or being a professional musician or whatever it is. It's like, yes, some people fell off, but if you continue with the process, with the consistency, then like it will lead you somewhere that I think the majority of the time will be a good place. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I think 100%. If you'd have told me at 18 or 19 when I was going through some events that I've described to you, that somehow I'd be able to relate those to what I'm doing now, I'd have been like, dude, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're crazy. But the truth is, everything you kind of go through in life and everything that you deal with, and I think athletes have a unique way because they have so many failures and successes, and it's all in one, right? All in a season, and
Mm-hmm.
it could happen actually in a couple days. You'd be at the lowest point and be at the highest point in a matter of days. I mean, I remember just going back real quick, SECs. My senior year, we all crapped the bed. I mean, we were like tennis. We should have been top 2 in the SEC. We were like 5th. I mean, and our coach was so mad, and all of us were like, "Dude, what are we going to do now?" I mean, we got regions in 2 weeks, and we had a region that we were probably second or third. We ended up winning region that year because we kind of banded together and said, "Let's go do. We know we can believe it. Let's believe in ourselves. Let's go do this." But I just think about that in a microcosm of life. 2 weeks prior, we were all like, "Oh, dude, we suck." 2 weeks later, we're on top of the world, and that's kind of life. The opportunities that you kind of put yourself in position. Yeah, of course, some people are more gifted than others. Some people have been given more than others. But at the end of the day, each of these things, especially as an athlete, teaches us a lesson. And sometimes we don't know where that ends up. And here we are, here I am at 41 doing what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going to be in 20 more years, but I can promise you that that all the lessons that I look back and think, okay, this and that and this and that, they all kind of converge and kind of can help you if you're willing to kind of take a step back and look back to kind of our original point. Take a step back every now and then and look at what's going on and see where you might be able to change and maybe pivot and adapt.
Yeah. So we're almost out of time. So I'll ask you real quick. I'm asking everybody the same question this year, and you kind of already touched on it and probably in some way already answered it. But I want to ask you, how do you stay motivated after failing to reach a goal?
How do I stay motivated after failing to reach a goal is the belief that I had in the beginning. You know, I had a belief in the beginning that I could do it. And just because I may not have accomplished it that particular day doesn't mean I can't accomplish it. And sometimes that, you know, just like I just said, that may end up a different goal later in life. Like, right, I wanted to make an Olympic team. I didn't make the Olympic team, but I a lot of things happened in my pursuit of trying to get there. I met a lot of people. I got to travel the world. I saw a lot of different things. And in the process, I learned a lot about myself. So while the ultimate goal is unbelievable, and sometimes you may fail to get to that ultimate goal, at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that happen, steps along the way that will teach you about yourself and you'll be able to learn.
Sounds good.
And at the end of the day, Jesse, about giving back to people, exactly what you're doing. You got this podcast, sharing with people. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, what's, yeah, we can make a lot of money. We can do all this, but at the end of the day, we need to be about people and loving people and helping people become the best of who they are.
Mhm.
And you look around, and it's just not happening right now. And I think that as athletes that have kind of been a part of teams, that's the global, you know, this world's a team. We're all one person. How can we help our the person next to us? And you know, we've all been on teams where we're like, hey man, come on, let's keep going. We got to keep going. And that's kind of my thought is, you know, how can we help one another become the best of who we are?
Yeah, that's a great point to end on, Eric. I got to get you to your next meeting. So thanks for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we could keep going if you, if you didn't have somewhere to be. So
Yeah, well, maybe I can jump on another time. We can have. I love this. I think what you're doing is awesome, and I'm
appreciate it.
always happy to keep talking. And if there's anything I can help with, I'm always here.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thanks.